Okay,
Vijay.
okay. Now it's 9 o'clock. So unfortunately, I couldn't have had a chat with everybody. But when we come to the exam, you will have the opportunity to speak. I think at least 7 minutes. So we'll have a short discussion. I think starting in the beginning of December or even in the end of November, because you are around 150, so you will need a lot of time. I will need a lot of time to listen to all of you. But today still is like I would like to start with a new theme. I would like to start with Socrates, because we will eventually, I plan to come to Plato, and also the second part of the lecture will be devoted to two major philosophical schools of late antiquity, which are Epicureanism and Stoicism. Well, we'll start with Socrates now. Okay, very good. Socrates, first of all, just to make a like a swift transition from India to Socrates. Socrates was a son of a stonemaker and a midwife. So he was from, we can say, a low strata of the society. He was not a Brahmin, we can say. And because in India you have castes, Brahmins, Kshatri, Vaishya, Shudra, and so on. So, well, according to Indian standards, or Egyptian standards, if you want, Socrates was from low descent. He was well, I can say more or less he was Shudra in in um, in Indian terms. So this means that this is very important, because in the majority of ancient civilizations, this caste system, this sort of well, uh, this caste system sort of laid great stress on the descent of a certain man. So a man from a lower classes, lower strata of the society had no, usually as a rule, had no access to say philosophy, or I would say learning. So even Buddha, he was from the higher classes. He was the son of a prince, okay, and a prince himself. So with Socrates, we have what we can say plebeian, okay, plebeian. So and this was also stressed by German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. He said, well, because Nietzsche was a major critic of Socrates and his philosophy. We'll speak about that later. And Nietzsche stressed very much that point that Socrates was of low birth, low origin. Okay, but for philosophy, it is very important that philosophy is open to everybody. So no one is excluded, neither man or a woman, neither black or white, neither say slave or owner. Well, now we have no slaves because United Nations abolished slavery officially in 1948, according to the Charter of the Human Rights. So officially there are no slaves. But of course, people differ in their material well-being, in their position in the society, and so with Socrates, the first thing which I think is very important with Socrates is that he's a democrat. He's from the middle of the people, sort of one of the people. This is very American also, because Americans uh, do not have aristocracy, so earls or knights or dukes. So just citizen so and so. Okay. So with Socrates, we have also, we can say, a citizen Socrates. Okay, a citizen. Athenian citizen. He was born in Athens, and well, also there's a second question, which is, I think, is very important, is the question of metropolis. The question of capital of the country, because all activity of Socrates was connected with Athens, the capital of the republic, which was also called Athens or Athenian Republic. But the capital, the metropolis, was Athens, and all life of Socrates was there. So now, because I'm a Muscovite, and perhaps some of you are New Yorkers or citizens of New Delhi or some other metropolis, so you can understand what is to be a citizen of a big city, of a megapolis, and how possible is to be a philosopher, to practice philosopher in a big city, in a capital of the country. Okay, vis-a-vis the government officials, for example, the supreme power structures, the White House or the Kremlin or whatever, Acropolis or whatever you want. So these are two things that I want to stress before we come to the contents of the philosophy of Socrates. The third point is that Socrates didn't take money for his lessons, and he had no formal lessons, you know. Well, somebody also accused me for just having just an informal talk with my students. These accusations, well, I would say accusations in double commas, they they were already present in Moscow Physical Technical Institute, where I teach. One of the students wrote in chat that instead of lectures, there's just informal talk with the students. Okay, so well, the students suppose that I will give them some very important skills, and after my lectures they will become themselves philosophers. Well, maybe you will become to a certain extent philosophers, but if I follow the Socratic method, or maybe Marina will show us the slide with maietic. Here it is, the same slide, only in the if you see in the right, to the right, there is a maietic Socratic method. What is that? It's Maier is a midwife, so Maier helps to give birth to, helps pregnant women to give birth to children. So what is that? Why Socrates compares himself with with a midwife? Well, because midwife helps the pregnant woman to deliver a child, but midwife herself is not pregnant, is not waiting for a child, so she helps other. So maietic method is to help others to give birth to their own ideas, sort of. If you are pregnant with some ideas, my task is to help you. Well, of course, I can ask money for that, and I wonder why Socrates, comparing himself with a midwife, didn't take money, because usually midwives take some money for, you know, for their services. But well, I think that by not taking money for his lessons, Socrates insisted on this democratic and voluntary and informal procedure, that and I think it is also somehow connected with the midwife's operation, because midwife, what does she do? She stimulates the pregnant women. Stimulation means some chaotic motions. Okay, so well, I'm not making any motions, but I'm speaking about a lot of subjects, mentioning a lot of names, and it seems like chaotic also, or hectic, you know. And well, maybe chaotic is better, but well, the aim of that is to stimulate your own mental activity, even if it is painful for some of you. So, but that I want to explain myself, and why I'm following the Socratic method. But you can say, well, there is Hegelian method, and there are many other methods in philosophy. But well, this is my choice. I prefer Socratic method. I think that it is also very, it has very it has many possibilities, but maybe it is not so formal, you know, because people ask me, well, just formulate the aim of your lecture, formulate the essence, the abstract of what you will be speaking about, give us some keywords, okay, so that we could follow you on Google, googling these keywords, and having some, or give us literature, say about Socrates, give us the best books which are written about Socrates, and so on. Well, Socrates himself didn't follow this method. He didn't start his talk with a, now we'll speak about beauty. Well, there's a dialogue with one of the sophists, and it is devoted to the concept of beauty, but it doesn't start with a definition of beauty or with the formulation of the aim of the talk. It starts with just informal greetings. I mean, uh, Hippius the Great is a dialogue. Okay, uh, shut down your microphones, everybody, because otherwise there's too much noise. Well, maybe in Athenian Agora there was also noisy, and Socrates didn't pay attention to these noises. But I'm not as perfect as Socrates. I am irritated by noise. Excuse me. This is my deficiency or imperfection, I would say. But still, now you can understand. This is a method. This is of course and this method sort of presupposes some kind of anarchy and some kind of inspiration and some kind of, as say Paul Feyerabend would say, proliferation of ideas. So exuberance, you know, exuberance. So maybe not all ideas or associations which I use will be fruitful, but who knows, when you just uh, throw the seed, you never know the destiny of this particular seed. Will it give birth to a plant, or will it just go, well, just be exterminated, or, well, sort of get lost somewhere without bearing fruit? So we never know. Maybe one word or one association or one, say, like comparison will be fruitful for a certain person. Who knows? There are a lot of you now, and from different cultures, from different, I would say, uh, well, milieus, and even different occupations. Some of you are from life sciences, some of you are computer specialists. So it also has a certain imprint on your way of thinking. Well, that's enough for a brief introduction. Now, a little bit more about Socrates. There is a story which was told by Cicero. Cicero is a great orator of the Roman Empire, and he was a great admirer of Plato and Socrates, but he lived, of course, much later, about 400 years later, and he lived in Rome, at that time the capital of the civilized world, in the first century before Christ, Cicero. So, Marina, can I use I can use the chat here, it is. So I will write, um, but the screen presentation somehow hampers me. So Marina, can you just stop the demonstration of the screen so that, yes, so that I could use the chat more freely. So I would like to write the name Cicero, maybe because I know that some people have difficulties with names. Cicero. This is in Russian, it's because the majority are Russians. In Russian, there's Ciceron, a great orator, and also, but he is widely known as an orator, but he's also a philosopher, and he wrote important philosophical treatises in Latin, of course, and also he collected a lot of stories about Plato and Socrates. So some of the stories we have only which are pertain to the biography of Socrates, we have from Cicero. So one of the stories very, I think, important, and I would like you to just listen to it attentively. So there was a certain man called Zopyrus. Well, he was a physiognomist. According to Cicero, I'm just retelling you the story. And this physiognomist, uh, physiognomist, well, I think you have a vague idea what is a physiognomist. So a man who can tell the character from the face of a man. Well, of course, I have some, for example, um, well, Ilya Cook, he has a picture. I presume that it is his picture, but who knows, um, you never know when you are in social networks whether you are dealing with avatar or with a picture of a man. So there can be many other opportunities. But if we presume that this is your picture, so from your face, from your photo, I can get, if I'm a physiognomist, I can get some information about your character, about your intellect, about your abilities, and so on, and about also your moral features. So Zopyrus, when looking attentively on Cicero, you had a lot of we had a lot of time to an opportunity to see attentively the sculptural uh, um, uh, picture of Socrates. So Zopyrus, looking at Cicero attentively, said, well, Cicero, you are prone to some vices, vice, which is, in Russian it's parok. So you like not a good man if we judge from your face. And well, his disciples, his pupils, were very angry with Zopyrus, with this physiognomist, and they said, well, you are telling crazy things. You are this is stupid. We know that our uh, teacher is virtuous. Virtues means добродетельный. Virtues, I'm sorry. Virtues. Virtues. He's a good man. But Cicero said, no, don't, he's right. Zopyrus is right. I am by my nature, by my inclinations, by my instincts, an evil man, prone to vices. But I, by sort of effort and working on myself, I just mended or bettered my character. And so this is also very democratic and also important for everybody, that you, even if you have bad inclinations, don't be discouraged, because Socrates gives you an example of how to work on yourself, how to work on your character, so how to become better. And also, well, I've already mentioned Nietzsche. So this story, which was very well known to Nietzsche, uh, Nietzsche, a German philosopher. So Nietzsche was a great antagonist of Socrates and of Socrates' philosophy. So when Nietzsche commented on this story, he said, well, this is this plebeian attitude towards virtue and vice. This is like morality. Well, and I want a person, the real Superman is a person who is born good, not makes himself good out of bad, say, initial conditions, but a person who is good by birth, aristocrat by birth, understand, intelligent person by birth, and not a person who sort of like we call it self-made man, a man who makes himself, who works on himself with a psychologist or alone or using some methods, I don't know. But so we can say from this story, we can say also that Socrates is a pattern of all those people who try to work on themselves, to make themselves better. Okay? And Nietzsche said, no, this is no use. If you are plebeian, if you are of low birth, if your parents are alcoholics, for example, you have no chances in this life, or you will remain forever. Yes, of course, Alexei Fedoseev, it's a good question. Uh, 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 Not Socrates, maybe himself, but Plato, and we'll speak about that later, in the dialogue which is called um, uh, the Republic, was critical towards democracy, and we'll speak about that later. But for me, it's important to stress that it's not if we take Socrates just at face value, okay, we can see that there's a lot of democratic features in Socrates as a man, okay. So he is of low birth, he is self-made man, he doesn't take money, and he is not so like we say a big wheel or a big purse. So he's not an oligarch in any way. Um, Poor man, and also democratic in his behavior. So he speaks with freely with anyone whom he meets in the agora or in the square, Athenian, in the center of Athens, where there's a marketplace also. So he's very accessible. Okay, so everyone can ask him any question, even pertinent. Pertinent. This pertinent, so arrogant questions, and he will not be scandalized by that. He would answer any kind of questions. He is very communicative, and at the same time there is something in him that defies common sense and common experience, and even I would say our ideal of a man. And I will ask Marina to give the slide where there is a discussion whether it's good for a philosopher, for a man to um, become a philosopher. Uh, Here, yes. This is from the dialogue which is called Gorgi. So you see to the right, you see the English translation, and to the left is a Greek text, original Greek text. So you see, when I see an elderly man uh, uh, going on with philosophy and not getting rid of it, yes, that is the gentleman Socrates, whom I think is in need of a whipping. So if an elderly man continues with uh, studying philosophy or doing philosophy, well, because well, and then follows the explanation. Uh, that philosophy makes man unmanly because um, he is shunning or just escaping political activity, which makes man glorious. So because philosophy, um, by say by definition, is making man sort of aloof somehow, aloof or um, outsider. So he looks at the events in the state, for example, elections in the presidential elections in the United States, if we take, or COVID epidemics. He takes it like as an observer from afar, looking at all events, political and cultural, from afar, sort of just not getting too much emotionally involved in them. And this is a bad thing for politician. If, say, a politician would say, well, I don't think anything about this or that burning question which people are sort of very emotionally somehow reacting about. Well, I prefer to speak about eternal truths like life and death, virtue and vice, say truth and lie. So generalizations. And then, well, the outcome, according to this text, is that this philosopher, if he insists on doing philosophy to the end of his life, he will end with whispering in a corner with 3 or 4 lads and never utter anything free, high, or spirited or spiritual. Okay, so, but this is not this is quite mistaken appreciation of Socrates' activity. Socrates never shunned the centers and markets of the city, or agoras. You see, if you have some knowledge in Greek, you can see tas agoras. It means forums or marketplaces or squares. Agora. Agora is in Greek the marketplace or the just square. Or in Latin, well, I think you can, Marina, please stop the demonstration so that I could write anything here in agora. Agora means just square, and the Latin equivalent is forum. So there's a place where all people get. And according to this text, to the opponent of Socrates, this is the place where people become famous. But if we take the biography of Socrates, we can see that he didn't shun, so he didn't avoid the agors or the forums, or fori, I would say, fora, yes. Okay, so he didn't avoid the marketplaces, or he lived in the capital, so he was known to everyone. He was not an obscure figure. Everyone in Athens knew who is Socrates. He was even depicted in the comedy of Aristophanes, called The Clouds. And everybody, because Athenians liked theatrical performances, so all of them knew who is Socrates, even because Aristophanes was a very able writer of comedies, and so everybody knew, just seeing these theatrical performances or discussing them, who is Socrates. So Socrates was quite a noted. We cannot say that he ended his life in just chattering with 3 or 4 lads in some corner. No, he spoke with not 3 or 4, but much more pupils, and he ended his life not in this way, just in obscure way, but he was sentenced to death. And this trial of Socrates was I would say, a performance of a kind, and it attracted attention of all the citizens of Athens. So when Socrates was tried for blasphemy and for seducing young men, there were 2 accusations. First was blasphemy, or introducing new deities. Well, it is not exactly atheism, but it's introducing new deities. This was the first accusation. The second accusation was seducing young men, youth, well, young men. Well, this doesn't mean that he, this seduction, it doesn't mean that he was, it's not a sexual harassment. It was a spiritual seducing, that he seduced them by sort of like, well, suggesting to them false ideas, okay? Well, you know, this is a, in Russian it's suggestia, but I think it's in English the same psychological term, suggestion. Suggestion. So it's also a common word if you suggest something, but you can suggest ideas. And that is, in psychological language, it's called suggestia or suggestion. So that he sort of like mesmerized them, you know, mesmerize, this like hypnotize, okay? So this means the suggestion in psychology. So these young men are inexperienced, and well, Socrates is depicted by his accusers as a old seducer, okay, who knows how to sort of spoil young men, okay? And that made him dangerous enough to be sentenced to death, okay? So just imagine, a person doesn't kill anybody, doesn't steal anything, but he's trialed and sentenced to death. For what? So but the idea that he was trialed publicly in the center of Athens, and the same agora where all people collected, were collected or gathered, better, on special occasions. So this all created a certain sensation, okay? So we cannot say that Socrates died unknown in an obscure corner, but he died very much known and in very unusual circumstances, and of course before the eyes of the whole city, okay? So so this is this you see these accusers who said that Socrates was doing futile work and was like you can say, well, in Russian we have a word неудачник, but maybe there's an English equivalent. Somebody will help me.
Maybe a loser.
Loser, but
A loser, yes. Loser, yeah.
informal.
Loser is a very good. Yes, loser is a very good word. Yes. So, well, it was, if we take this fragment again, so we will see that Socrates was, so everybody who is doing philosophy when he's over 60 or in his 60s, like myself, I'm 63. So this man is a loser in life. He will never become great. He will remain forever an obscure figure and a certain, I would say, crazy, crazy man of, well, we say, uh, we can say a crazy man in the of the city. In Russian, it is городской сумасшедший. Okay, but maybe there is also a good English equivalent of that. Well, but the majority are Russians, so they will understand me. Uh, Now I have a question. Was Socrates so dangerous for the society to be sentenced to death indeed? Or this sentence was not motivated by protection of society? Well, this is the very important questions, and I would say there are many important philosophers who spoke on that subject, starting from Hegel, who said that protection of that society needs to be protected against such intruders as Socrates. So according to, well, maybe it is unjust from the subjective point of view, but from the state, from the point of view of the state, Hegel said that state has the right to protect itself against dissidents. And Socrates was indeed a dissident, okay? Dissident. Um, Also, we can remember that maybe it is also a lyrical digression, but I think it is important from the mathematical point of view that in 1976, I saw in Moscow a theatrical performance called Dialogues with Socrates, with Armen Jigarkhanyan playing a great actor playing Socrates. Dialogues, mm, dialogues with Socrates. It was staged by Edward Radzinsky, who is known perhaps only in Russia. But for foreigners, I will explain that at that time it was Soviet period, and this performance, Dialogues with Socrates, was not allowed for 2 years to be staged on the theatrical, or in theater, because the censorship sort of the censors were afraid that people will see in Socrates type of a dissident. And at that time, if you see 1976, academician Sakharov was the most important dissident of the Soviet Union. And so censors were afraid of an association with Sakharov or Solzhenitsyn. So Socrates, and that's why this, I would say, innocent performance dealing with the ancient period was regarded as potentially, I would say, provocative. But eventually it was allowed to be staged. So I saw it in January 1976. I think it was one of the first performances of this play. But you can see how the image of Socrates even now is to a certain extent provocative, okay? Even now tastes differ, I would say, when we start speaking about Socrates. Well, very few figures provoke such discussions. One of these figures is, say, Russian writer Dostoevsky. Also, you can divide people half and half, those who like Dostoevsky and who hate Dostoevsky, okay? And I think the same is valid for this auditory to which I'm addressing now. So the same with Socrates. Some people say, well, Socrates is antipathic for me. I don't like people like Socrates. You understand? They are too, well, a little bit even too crazy. You understand? So more mentally not very well balanced. Too, they behave well in too, I would say, irrationally somehow. Well, or not enough. They have not enough inner discipline, or they also sort of defy or challenge the rules of the height of the society, and especially the social equilibrium and so on. Well, but here we are with Socrates. So now just a few words about how it all ended. So Socrates was sentenced to death, but before he was sentenced, according to Athenian laws, he was allowed to make a speech in defense of himself. And this speech was preserved by Plato, one of the disciples of Socrates, one of the pupils of Socrates, and it's called Apology of Socrates. So this is like a short treatise, and it is preserved. And of course, it is, you can read it in English or in Russian or maybe even in Hindi. So it is like a classic work, a masterpiece of ancient rhetorics, Apology of Socrates. So this is a speech which Socrates delivered before the Athenian tribunal in defense of himself. Okay, so, and here we start quite a new topic. This is a Platonic philosophy, because Plato, a disciple of Socrates, or a pupil of Socrates, was the author of all those dialogues from which we can have an image of Socrates. And now remains the very important question whether the Socrates of in Plato's dialogues was a real historical Socrates, or maybe something was invented by Plato himself. Okay, like a historical Jesus, we have Jesus as a historical figure, as a, say, a preacher, a prophet, and uh, also we have Jesus of the Gospels. Okay, Jesus according to Saint Matthew, or to according to Saint John. So so there, in a question of a person who is not adherent of Christian religion, there perhaps can arise a question whether historical Jesus corresponds 100% to Jesus of the Gospels. The same, by analogy, we can say about Socrates, whether Socrates, the real man, corresponds to Socrates in Plato's dialogues, and whether the apology of Socrates is really the speech, word by word, cited and pronounced by Socrates himself before the Athenian public, before the tribunal, before the, well, you understand. So this is the question, and I now would ask for a 5 minutes break, and also I will make breaks after 40 or 45 minutes. So I think it is like a lesson in school. So I think you need some rest and some time for just digesting all this. And the next part will be devoted to Plato, and we'll speak about Plato and Platonic philosophy. So it's enough with Socrates. Well, of course, I will say how Socrates died. This will be after a short break. So now you can have a rest for 5 minutes, okay? Yes, okay. I will shut down the microphone. Hello, everybody. Let's continue. It's curious how the brain works. I wrote pertinent, but the word which I wanted to was impertinent, which means arrogant, impertinent, but not pertinent. So excuse me for that mistake. This is the problems of the aging brain, okay? So it's not sufficiently supplied with oxygen, okay? So you should keep it in mind, okay? Well, maybe your brains are more younger, and they are well supplied by oxygen. So, but my brain is sometimes just gives me some surprises, and well, I'm always sort of amazed how it works and how it sometimes makes stupid mistakes. Okay, so we'll continue. And Marina, if you are still present here, please show us the slide with the death of Socrates. This is a picture of famous French painter. Um, yes, Jacques-Louis David. So you see this is the death of Socrates. Why Socrates is just pointing his finger above? What does this gesture mean? It means that Socrates says that the expectations of a man are high, not in this world. Okay, so that they can kill a body, but they can do nothing bad to a soul. Later, this saying we'll find in the Gospels, a Gospel according to Saint John, and I think other Gospels also. So don't be afraid of those who kill the body, but they cannot kill your spirit. Be afraid of those who can kill a body and seduce your soul or your spirit. So, well, of course, the judges could not influence the spirit or the soul of Socrates. They could not do any harm to the soul. They can only injure or destruct the body. So here is what we can say idealism. So here starts already Platonic interpretation of Socrates' life and teaching. Whether it is accurate or not, it is a great question, and I prefer just not to give an answer because the opinions differ on that subject. So well, I would say Platonic philosophy, not Socratic philosophy, but Platonic philosophy. So, according to Plato, so man consists of two parts. So, Marina, I need chat again. Okay, thank you. So, this body and soul dichotomy, I would say, body and soul. Well, it seems quite strange now for materialists because they say, well, we don't have soul, we have only brain. And so what our thoughts, our emotions, our volitions are only product of the working of the brain, of our brain. So there is no soul as a spiritual entity, you understand? Spiritual entity. Okay, and well, and this I would say connection with the gospel story about Jesus, and he's saying that don't be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot injure the soul. It also seems a little bit strange to a modern man because it is like a bridge between philosophy and religion. Okay, so from Socrates, you built a bridge to Jesus Christ, okay? And it, of course, it is very obvious. And that's why Nietzsche, who was a great enemy of Christianity, he said that Socrates spoiled sort of the sources, the wells of the Greek, say, thought and learning, and introduced this quite foreign to a Greek civilization notions, which are very Christian in itself. Okay, so Nietzsche didn't deny that there is some resemblance between Socrates and Jesus. Okay, and of course, this dichotomy of body and soul is just a key one to the Platonic philosophy. And that's why Plato was immensely popular among Christians, the first Christians, and say St. Augustine and others. Now, what is the relation, according to Plato, of body and soul? Who plays the prime violin? Okay, so, and according to Plato, it's definitely the soul which is the active principle, and the body is a passive principle. Okay, so, well, historians of philosophy say that perhaps this was formulated later when Plato, after the death of Socrates, was visiting Italy and was much influenced by the Pythagorean school, okay, which we spoke about in our previous lecture, because Pythagoras taught that about the transmigration of souls, and here we find not only not so much the influence of Socrates himself, but the influence of the Pythagorean school on later Plato. Okay, you understand? Later Plato. So young Plato and later Plato. Okay. So if we use this expression, so well, of course, the apology didn't appear immediately in so-called newspapers of Athens. Okay, it's not just how it happens today when a person is judged and he pronounced some speech, and immediately the newspapers take the news, and you will see what this or that person said in his or her defense. Okay, so of course this apology of Socrates was composed later, as well as other Platon so-called Socratic or Platonic dialogues, and we can speak about now Platonic philosophy freely. And well, it is just to finish with the death of Socrates and its importance for illustration of the Platonic philosophy. I would say there's one moment when Socrates died. He asked his pupils to sacrifice a cock to a god of health. Cock. Well, cock usually was sacrificed to a god of health by the Greeks when a person was cured from a disease. But what does it mean when a person dies? From what disease is he cured? Well, you know that there is this very fashionable movie of Zanussi, Life as a disease, which is life as a well, заразный, what does it mean? Contagious, yes. Life as a contagious disease which is transmitted through a in a venereal way, through sexual act. Okay, so well, this is like a joke, but the idea that life is a disease is already here. That because when a person dies, he's delivered or he's freed from the disease, which is life. So life is a disease. Oh, very good, Mikola. Yes, this is Zanussi, you know, the Polish film director, Zanussi. Zanussi. I think like that. Well, so sexual transmitted disease, yes, but maybe fatal, maybe I would say, okay, but now we have this idea of life as a disease. And again, Nietzsche again said that here is the like the essence of Socratic hate for life. So Socrates as a hater of life. Okay, so for Nietzsche it was quite obvious that here we sort of Socrates sort of exposed himself. Now we see that Socrates is in fact a hater of life. Okay, and for Nietzsche it was quite opposite to his own Nietzschean philosophy as a uh, praise, because Nietzsche said that let us praise life and beware of those who speak about some values that are extra earth or celestial in some other world values. Okay, so here is an example of a man who cares nothing about his earthly life and thinks of some treasures in a future life. Okay, this is the essence of Platonism. And now we can come also to this. So there are two worlds, okay? The world of the soul and the world of the body, this world and other world. And now we can just logically come to the allegory of the cave. Marina, yes? Uh, I think it is logical, yes? Now to introduce the slide with the allegory of the cave. Uh, no. Oh, here it is. Yes. Plato's allegory of the cave. This is the subject of Plato's work, The Republic. It is also a dialogue, and according to Plato, Socrates takes an active part in the dialogue. But usually people speak about this work, The Republic, as a typically Platonic, um, uh, like opus, or just it comes, just the historians of philosophy find many influences of Pythagorean school there, and other, and even influences of Egyptian worldview. So what is here? You see the prisoners in a cave, which are looking, which are sort of with their, which are first of all chained. Secondly, they are with their backs to the sun and to the entrance of the, or exit of from the cave. Also, here is a certain fire, which reminds us of a central fire of Pythagoreans. And in the rays of the light coming from this fire, this light and the objects which are carried by certain people, uh, there are produced shadows on the wall. So the main idea of Plato is that the prisoners can see only shadows, but not real objects. And all their talk, all their interests is focused on those shadows and the order in which they are sort of they appear. Okay, so you see the jug appears before the horse, and then follows the circle, and then follows the bird, and people who are chained, and they do not see either the object themselves or those who carry these objects. So they are just wondering why the order is this or that. As you remember the first lecture, people wondered how many configurations do the atoms of Democritus have. So whether they are finite or infinite. And if their configurations or forms are finite, then how can we explain the number of these configurations? From what does this number come? Is it contingent in a certain sense? And what is the source or cause of this contingency? So the same here. Here's a contingent, like a series of these shadows, and of course there's plenty of things to think for prisoners of this cave, and their attention is focused on the shadows. But then what happens according to Plato? one of the one of the prisoners somehow manages to free himself from the shackles or from the chains and to get to the outside, to the exit of the cave, and to get to this other world, which is to the bright sun and fresh air. And what happens with that lucky person who succeeds to get out of the cave? At first of all, his, according to Plato, his eyesight is dazzled by so much light because his eyes were accommodated uh, mm, to the darkness of the cave. Okay, so at first, because of his, so the sunlight sort of dazzles him and blinds him. And at first, this man cannot see anything at all. And perhaps he undergoes a certain despair and thinks that why have I left this cave, which was so cozy, where I had my mates or my friends with whom I could talk about these shadows, and now I don't see anything and I'm alone. And you see, he climbs, the same man sort of climbs to the exit. So at first it is like a certain shock and frustration and well, I would say disillusionment. But then as long as his eyes accommodate to the bright light of the sun, he can see the world as it is. He can see not only shadows but real objects. And now he can compare his reminiscences about the shadows and the real objects. And the first thing which is obvious is that objects are colored and shadows are black and white. So there's additional information which we can get if we sort of deliver ourselves from the cave, sort of liberate ourselves from the cave. So we have a broader view. So this view which the prisoners had was only limited. Their information was limited. They didn't have all the information. So now this liberated prisoner thinks that now he has the whole information, and now he has a key to understanding those things which seemed chance or contingent while he was a prisoner in the cave. Now he can see the general laws, sort of, which explain what seemed unexplained. Okay, so this is very important. This allegory of the cave is very important for the philosophy of science, because of course science give us a clue to sort of explain what seems unexplained. For example, this is the difference between so-called ordinary knowledge and scientific knowledge. So people possess ordinary knowledge, and they can be compared with those prisoners in the cave that see only shadows. For example, every say household, well, every servant can make like can boil the water, but not all of these servants can understand what is what is the physics of this process of boiling, and how why can we call it a phase transition. Okay, so this is only scientists that can understand the causes of events, and the ordinary person just uses just uses this world, have practical ordinary knowledge, but doesn't understand, but a person doesn't ordinary person doesn't understand the laws of nature, which which are sort of under these like ordinary events or ordinary happenings. So that's why I insist that Plato's allegory of the cave is very important. It's a clue for philosophy of science. And so I can say that this liberated person of Plato's cave, of Plato's, is a true scientist. And now, when he gets back, because he wants to sort of um, how to say, share his new insights or share his new knowledge with the other prisoners, with his fellow prisoners, whom he left chained in the cave. When he comes to the cave a second time, just because he pities those prisoners, yes, so he wants to preach them the truth, okay? Now he when he comes to the cave for the second time, the same problem of accommodation happens, but in inverse direction. So now he is blinded by the darkness of the cave because his eyes were accommodated to the bright light of the sun. When you come from bright light to the say to the dark place, you at first you are also somehow blinded and you cannot see anything. So when he returned to the cave and started to preach to his fellow prisoners the existence of the outer world and the things themselves, and that they are what we see are only shadows, they don't believe him because he cannot share with them the information about the shadows because he's completely blinded, and he in this darkness of the cave, he cannot see even the shadows. So, and when they ask him what shadows are displayed now, he can say nothing, and that's why they just sort of disbelieve him. They say, well, you don't know our realities, you are ignorant of what happens just now and you speak about some other world, maybe you are crazy. You see, this is a difficulty, and according to Plato, the same difficulty happened with Socrates. So Socrates was like a person who escaped from the cave of ordinary world, get some glimpses of the ideal world or ideas, try to share his insights or his views with the Athenians, with ordinary people, was disbelieved by them, mocked by them, and sentenced to death eventually. So you see that now the explanation of the fate of Socrates. So Socrates is that person who sort of escaped from the cave, and ring shadow. Uh, well, a ring is a allegory of the perfect, like, Marina, please stop the demonstration. I would like to return to chat. Uh, uh, a ring is a very important allegory in the Pythagorean school, because a ring or and sphere also sphere are important, like ideal objects, ideal geometrical figures, okay? So you remember that Pythagoras insisted that the form of the earth is spherical. So that's why the ring. So the ring is something special. But well, um, here is not we are dealing not with forms, but with well, of course, the shadow of the ring can also communicate some properties of the ring, okay? But here I think the main point is not that uh, um, well, I would say numbers are also kind of they can be regarded as shadows of things. You know, if you have only numerical picture of the world and you don't have the idea of equality, so your also your view is limited. Hmm. Who is holding the real object? This is a mystery. Well, perhaps there are. This is a kind of a demonstration that somebody wants to teach those inhabitants of the cave some essentials of knowledge. So this is kind of predestined harmony. Okay, so there are some servants of perhaps uh, well, if we take for example, it's easier to explain if there is a kind of a god or deity. Well, Socrates used to speak about god in singular, and if there is an idea of this god who is sort of exerting providence or showing love to people, then he can send those those people who are holding the real objects just to give some sort of teaching to those who are to those prisoners. Uh, well, you know, that's about the allegory of the cave. There is a lot of mysterious things, and well, also this fire. This is quite that can seem quite, I would say, uh, artificial. You see, so something there is quite artificial. So I think that Plato's idea is to show the difference between, to stress the difference between shadows and real objects. And in order to sort of continue to, so he uses some artificial means. And it seems to me that Plato himself doesn't sort of uh, uh, put the ends together in his allegories. So something remains sort of art here. Something remains not so well, sort of well, as a sort of some pieces do not stick together, you know, in a, I would say, um, logically I would say just logical picture. Okay, so here with Plato we have some, I would say, some questions which are still to be discussed, and of course the commentators on Plato's texts, especially on this seventh book of the Republic, they uh, they express okay. So I cannot say, please shut down your microphone if it is possible. Now we have to speak. We have a few minutes. I promised to make um, a big break. So now I will make a break for, I think, for 10 minutes. Yes, and we'll resume our talk in uh, 10:30, and we'll speak about democracy and the ideal state of Plato, because it is also very important. It's the main subject of this dialogue, the Republic. And we'll speak about also democracy and the ideal, how the ideal state. Well, you see, you can ask whether it corresponds, whether it has some anything to do with the philosophy of science. I would say yes, because in the 20th century, a great philosopher of science, Karl Popper, will criticize Plato's view of the ideal state exactly for lack of democracy and totalitarian somehow features of Plato's ideal state. So it is another theme, and I need some 10 minutes to just get concentrated. And you also need maybe some 10 minutes to drink a cup of coffee. Well, you can do it, of course, just now, but still, just we need a break. And if you have published an article and you can present it, it will be appreciated. But only this, it shouldn't be too scholarly, too technical. Okay, so adapt, please, your presentation to more like a larger audience. So, okay, now we have this. Yes, okay. We already spoke about that via bacteria, but even earlier, the Democritus himself said that he visited India. I didn't know how he managed it, but Democritus, the founder of atomism, so maybe he have brought the main ideas of atomism from India. So so the same idea, but also it is according to a legend, Plato visited Egypt, so he could have just brought this caste system from Egypt. In Egypt there were also priests, warriors, and tax collectors, for example. So also there were different layers of the society. Well, the importance is that the philosophers, I just wanted to stress that it somehow corresponds to the like to a man himself, the mind, uh, the heart, mind, heart, and emotions. Emotions, or stomach. Well, emotions which come from stomach and from uh, sexual organs. So even if you look at the man, you will see that the higher part of man is his head, where the mind is centered. Then comes the middle, or the breast, or the heart. And then comes the lower abdomen, um, uh, stomach, abdomen, and sexual organs, which are a seat of emotions. Okay, so a seat of mind is the head, a seat of courage is the heart and lungs, and the seat of emotions are stomach and sexual organs. So the same in society. So society is pictured like a big man, like you see. And in a society, it also should be a place for mind. That means philosophers who rule everything and understand everything and have this self-consciousness. And then there is a place for warriors who should display courage that comes from the heart. They should be easy to become angry, uh, like irritable emotions. And then comes the craftsmen or the common people who are prone to good eating, to having sex or sexual, just like say, sensual pleasures, and that makes them the lower caste. Okay, so this is interesting that such idea comes from a man whose parents were, according to this like um, gradation, were of a lower caste. So somehow the initial Socratic message is turned upside down here. Now, what about democracy? So there's no place for democracy here. Uh, Yes, about the inborn nature, yes, okay. But the exact idea of Plato is that if a child possesses a soul of a philosopher, you see, of a philosopher, or talent for philosophy, you understand, philosopher, then he can be raised as a future philosopher, future leader. So in order to do that, children must be educated by philosophers themselves. So not in families. So family is abolished by Plato. There is no longer a family, because family is a origin of all inequality, of all say corruption in the society. Uh, so there children are not brought up in families according to this ideal state of Plato. They are brought up by the state, and when they are educated, the educator himself, the teacher, must see, distinguish, or like discern whether the talents of a, say, a young child show his predisposition to philosophy, or to military career, or to just being a craftsman, or say a commercial, a man of commerce. Or okay, so now here is no place for democracy, because all is sort of all the society is ruled by a group of philosophers, so they arrange everything. Also, this dialogue, the republic has a continuation. Mm. The continuation is the laws, and another dialogue, the laws. In the dialogue, the laws, there is no Socrates. Socrates is not acting in this dialogue. So it is called the late Plato's dialogue, and it just shows the laws of this ideal state. So these two dialogues should be taken together, and if they are taken together, they form the whole picture of the state, of this ideal state. And here we see, especially in the laws, that there is no place for democracy, that all decisions are formulated by the rulers, and others, especially warriors, blindly obey the orders. And the future warriors are brought up in this, how to say, virtue of obedience. You remember that in Pythagorean school, for 4 years, the pupils are not allowed to speak or put questions to a teacher. For 4 years, they have to obey blindly to the teacher, okay, to Pythagoras himself. And only after 4 years of probation, they are allowed to speak. So you see how undemocratic it is, and who influenced Plato? Not Socrates, but Pythagoreans. They influenced Plato. And so Platonic philosophy is not a continuation of Socratic philosophy. It's quite a new thing. And so I would say Plato himself is not less important than Socrates. Okay, now you see that and if a person displays disobedience, he is punished according to the laws, and he is sent to prison, which is called sophronisterium in sophro. This is a technical word which introduces us phronisterium. I will explain its origin or etymology. Sophronisterium. I think like that. So sophron means a person in his senses, a person who thinks good. It comes from the root phren, which means mind or reason. So a man who reasons good. So sophronisterium is a place where people are taught to think in a right way. So it's like a brainwashing machine, okay? Brainwashing machine. So you are brainwashed in a sophronisterium or in a prison. The philosophers or some special, well, the philosophers themselves, or they select persons who will speak with those prisoners and explain to them the right way of thinking. And if a person displays disobedience, even in that case, he is banned, banished from the state or executed. So this makes this society closed or totalitarian, according to Plato. And also Michel Foucault, in his also work on power, uh, also just makes this difference between totalitarian state and free state. But according to Michel Foucault, every state has some features of a totalitarian structure, because in every state there is school, there is mental hospital, for example, there is prison, where life cannot exist without punishing and obedience. Okay, so uh, mm, that's so according to anarchists, for example, Michel Foucault, the French celebrate French thinker of the 20th century, and according to Karl Popper, also a famous uh, Austrian thinker who lived most of his life, the second part of his life in London School of Economy, where he influenced George Soros, who was his pupil. And that's why George Soros, for example, established a foundation called Open Society, because this was the title of the book by Karl Popper, The Open Society and Its Enemies. And if you take the book by Karl Popper, The Open Society and Its Enemies, it is the best, I think, criticism of Plato's ideal state. So you see the link with the philosophy of science, because Karl Popper is the major representative of the philosophy of science. So you see how all is connected. I'm sorry. Uh, uh, so if you want to understand Karl Popper, you should read something of Plato, because without the information about Plato's Republic, you will not understand what Karl Popper is aiming at, what he's speaking about. And if you don't understand Karl Popper, you won't understand why George Soros called his foundation the Open Society Foundation. Okay, you see, so everything is connected in this world, and the roots of it start from ancient Greece. Okay, so in order to understand maybe the main strengths of the present day society, you should dig deeply into history and find the roots in ancient society. Okay, now we have a few minutes also. Well, in 10 minutes there will be a break, but before we make a break, I would like to speak about another two schools of antiquity. Um, Unfortunately, we have to skip the followers of Socrates, Diogenes, and his barrel. Well, just show us the slide, and then we'll come to Marina. Just show us the slide with the Diogenes and his barrel. Yes, here also. Yes, well, we'll see the yes, Diogenes sitting in his tube. Yes. Well, we can say that cynics, this Diogenes also, they were somehow followers of Socrates, because Socrates himself displayed this like cynical attitude. Okay, repeat. George Soros. George Soros, a great multimillionaire and philanthropist. George Soros. I think it is, if I will write in chat later. Now I'm just um, George Soros. I will write in chat. Well, well. So now let's return to Diogenes. So you see that his way of life, uh, he's surrounded by uh, dogs, which is in Greek kines, and that's why the philosophers were called cynical or cynical philosophers, and that from that comes the word, the adjective cynical. Okay, now and well, Megarics will speak about them later because they influenced a lot Hegelian philosophy. And about Cyrenaics or Cyrenaics, I will also speak. Well, one word is enough. The key word hedonism, which will later use while speaking about Epicureans and Epicurus himself, who was, I think, influenced by Cyrenaics. Okay, now enough with Socrates. Just a brief look on Raphael's picture, the Athenian school, and we'll come to Stoics. Okay, mm. Marina, can you show us Raphael's fresco, the Athenian school? We'll see here. Uh, Yes, here we'll see in the, it's very much known, and its original is in Vatican Museum in Rome. So the in the center there are two figures, and one is pointing upwards, like in the picture of David, the death of Socrates. So, but it is not Socrates now; it is Plato. So Plato repeats the gesture of his teacher, okay, pointing with his finger upwards. There another who is just going with him is Aristotle, who is just having his hands sort of stretched before him, somehow insisting that matter and form are two uh, like complementary causes, and that everything is formed out of matter, and matter is not bad principle, and especially the point of Aristotle is that we have no other world. All that happens in this world. We shouldn't regard this world as a cave and seek for other world, but we should remain in frame of this world. Now you see the Diogenes who is just laying on the stairs with a cup, and the cup is um, well, I I well maybe uh, I don't know whether it seems that this is Diogenes, but now well, uh, it's if one can see a cup, and then I myself cannot see it, but a cup shows that Diogenes, the episode of the life of Diogenes, that when he saw a young boy drinking from his hands, drinking water from his hands, then he said, well, this boy surpasses me in wisdom, so I don't need a cup. I will just drink using my hands, okay, palms, okay. So, well, this is there. There you can find also Epicurus and Hypatia, the first woman who was killed by a mob of Christian fanatics in Alexandria in the beginning of the 5th century AD. Exact as well, it shows also it is the destiny of Hypatia. This is a woman. Yes, you see, I cannot use the pointer, but the woman is. here you can see it. It's only the only woman. Okay. Thank you, Matvey. But about the woman, I think it's well, there are some women also here, but the woman is in a certain robe, gray robe, uh, is Hypatia of Alexandria. So, okay, we'll speak about her maybe later when we'll speak about the church relations, the relations of the church and science. Okay, so it is an example, unfortunate example. We can see your point. Yes, then I can show you Hypatia. Okay, very good. So now we'll pass to Stoics, the slide with the Stoics, uh, three Stoics. uh, Marina, is it possible to pass? Yes. Not yes, to Stoicism. So Zeno, Cleanthes, and Chrysippus. Well, these are representatives of the so-called Greek Stoicism, because Stoicism was born in Athens, and even the origin of the name of the school, Stoicism, it comes from Stoa, which is like a colonnade or portico with columns, or gallery. Your point. Okay. Well, well, my point, my mouse, where points my mouse, you can not see. Okay, but starting from Zeno. So Zeno started his schools in Athens, in the Agora, on the or the marketplace, where there was this store, which is like a gallery, where people could walk. And so Zeno walked with his first pupils in this gallery, and from that gallery, the whole philosophy of Zeno was called Stoicism. Zeno is not the same Zeno who is known for his paradoxes, Achilles and the turtle. This is not the same Zeno. That Zeno lived 200 years before the Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. Well, among the most important Stoics are Cleanthes, who wrote the poem called Zeus, which was translated by Russian poet Derzhavin, uh, and was called Bog, which is in Russian God. Well, if there are Iranians here, they can understand that Russian word Bog comes from Bhagwan or Bhaga. In Iranian language, it's Bhaga, it's wealth. So God is somebody who is wealthy. I don't know Bhagwan in Indian language, whether it is also corresponds to the word wealthy, but Russian word Bog is of the same root with the word bogатый, which is wealthy in Russian. So, Derzhavin translated this ode of Cleanthes, and so we can see that with Stoics there appeared a kind of monotheism. So this Zeus, who in original Greek religion was only like the president of the community of gods on the Olympus. Now he becomes the ruler of the world. Okay, so the image of Zeus is transformed into the image of God, the creator, the Christian God or monotheistic God, or Allah in Islam, or say God in Jewish religion. So, but how can it be possible, this transformation of ancient pluralistic polytheistic religion to this monotheism? It was due to the main concept of Stoics, the concept of fate, or like destiny, we can say also. So this destiny is important for philosophy of science, because from this idea of fate or destiny comes the idea of a natural law, which is also, of course, obligatory for everything in this world. So, for example, the law of gravity. However smart you are also subject to the law of gravity. If you don't want to obey to the law of gravity, you will be annihilated. For example, if you try to fly or just jump from the window, uh, perhaps you will think that you are challenging the law of gravity, but in fact, the law of gravity is challenging your life. Okay, so you will sort of be uh, well, annihilated or killed by the accident if you just step out of the window, if you happen to live in on the 11th floor or somewhere else. Okay, well, this fate is governing the whole universe, according to Cleanthes and according to Chrysippus, and perhaps according to Zeno himself. So then we come to Roman Stoicism, which is, I think, a little bit better known. And I will ask Marina to show us the remorse of Nero, the Emperor Nero. This is the slide. You see the remorse of Nero. It is the picture written by a famous English painter, artist. I think he's from the so-called Pre-Raphaelite school, which was very fashionable in 19th century England. But the idea is that Nero somehow was a very disorderly person, but his mother selected to him a teacher who was called Seneca. I will write in chat. Seneca. Uh, and Seneca wrote, of course, in Latin, not in Greek. And Seneca is formulated, I think, very well the main idea of Stoicism. He wrote exactly this, that the fate leads the obedient and drags the inobedient. Okay, so if you are obedient to a faith, if you are obedient to fate, it will lead you. If you are disobedient, it will drag you, notwithstanding your sort of will, against your will. So it is better to be obedient to your fate, to your destiny, than to be dragged by it. But whatever is your attitude towards your destiny, the outcome will be the same. Okay, so this is a very important concept, which I think um, reminds us of this inexorable, like laws of nature that, well, I would say uh, these laws do not, uh, well, regard people's wills or wishes. They are somehow even cruel to them, especially if we take technology, for example, the aircrafts or the electric trains. They can kill a person if he is disobedient to the rules, okay, to the laws. This is a well, this is very important, I think, idea of Stoics. And before we end with Stoicism, only briefly, I will speak about it. Maybe we'll return to this concept later when we'll speak about Spinoza and Hegel and so-called determinism. I would like Marina to show you the slide with uh, Marcus Aurelius, yes, who was the emperor of the Roman Empire and also a famous Stoic philosopher, which can be seen from his diary, personal diary, which was written, it is interesting, in Greek, not in Latin. well, why should a Roman emperor write in Greek? Just perhaps not to be understood by, say, profane people, okay? So Greek was, oh, I think the nobility of the Roman Empire, including Cicero himself, was bilingual. So every educated person in Rome was eager to study Greek, and to not to know Greek was a deficiency. Like today, bilingual. You see, I'm reading lectures in English, so Russian itself is not enough. So you need a second language. Well, for the Roman Empire, Greek language was that second language which educated people were proud to master. So the mastery of Marcus Aurelius was so great that he could write the whole treatise in Greek, and it is preserved, now translated into many languages, and so we have an example of Stoic philosophy of the 2nd century AD, or 2nd century of Christian era. So you can see this statue in Rome, Capitoline Hill, which resembles view of Capitol in Washington, where now important events are going to take place. So you can see how these uh, even geographical notions of the ancient world somehow come into a present world, okay? When we say the capital, we of course do not have the picture of Rome, Capitoline Hill or Campidoglio in Italian, but we have a picture of Washington, this DC, okay? So uh, it, it, I have already told you that uh, the the first American, the fathers of the American civilization were very much influenced by these ancient Roman and ancient Greek ideals. So, and they even borrowed some concepts like Senate. Senate is comes from ancient Rome. Okay, now we have a little break, the last one, I think, and after that, we'll speak about epicureans, which is more to the subject of our course, philosophy, history and philosophy of science, because Epicurus was a promoter of atomism. So we'll again return to atomistic worldview, and we'll speak also a few words about religion and atheism in connection with the poem by Lucretius, on the nature of things. Okay, now I ask you uh, for 5 minutes of rest, and then we'll finish the lecture. Okay, let's finish our lecture, and now we'll start with Epicurus. Mm, Epicurus. Well, you know, Epicureans and also hedonism also somehow is associated with Epicurus. Mm, hedonism. Well, we spoke about this Antisthenes and the. Well, I wouldn't say that Socrates taught us hedonism. Socrates taught us the contempt for earthly life. Well, it can be displayed either in asceticism or in hedonism. Just there are two directions which it can take. With cynics, it was kind of asceticism. With um, with others, Cyrenaics, it was a kind of a hedonism. Well, I don't know who influenced Epicurus, or he was a sort of self-educated person, but he found a certain new school which was called Epicurean school, and we know about the so-called garden of Epicurus, garden. of Epicurus. Well, this concept is very much Latin. I mean, the concept of a garden, because we find it in the Bible, the garden of paradise. Okay, the garden. So the garden from which Adam and Eve were banished. If we remember the first lecture, you remember I forgot how to say изгнать, but immediately my students helped me. Maybe it was Vasily, don't remember exactly, or Yegor maybe. They suggested this word banish, expel also, yes. Well, I prefer the word banish or exile also. You can also use the verb exile, that means to send somebody into exile. Well, so, but now we have the garden from which nobody is exiled or banished or expelled, the garden in which everybody is invited. And we can remember the inscription which was which met the tourist when he sort of approached the garden of Epicurus. So the inscription is this one: hospes hic bene manebis, which means in Latin, uh, or, like traveler, you will have you will have fun here. So you will be at ease here. Uh, I will write in Latin. Well, why I insist sometimes on writing in Latin? Hospice or hospes, I think. Hic bene manebis. Well, even if I risk to make some mistakes, but I insist. Why? Uh, because it is methodologically right. Because if you Google these words in double commas, you will certainly find a scholarly book on Epicurus and Epicurus' garden, because a scholar who is specialized in ancient philosophy will always use Latin or Greek. But we say Epicurus is Greek. Is why we use Latin? This very easily can be explained, because this inscription comes from Seneca in Latin translation. So we cannot find a Greek original of this inscription. So only a Latin translation, which we can be found in Seneca's works. So Seneca was himself not an Epicurean, but he somehow sort of um, like discussed, was in a discussion with Epicureans, because Stoics and Epicureans were like right and left, or plus and minus, two competing schools in ancient Rome. And whatever it is, we find it in Latin translation. Hospes, it means traveler or a guest. Guest, you will, bene, it's mean good. So, and manebis, it's to remain, okay? So you will remain here and you will have enough pleasure. Hic summa summum bonum voluptas est. Summum bonum voluptas est. Voluptas is like hedon in Greek. So so if you want to est. Also, if you dial this in, copy it from chat and put it into Google, you will see that some scholarly book on Epicurus. This is the continuation. So, to all in all, it sounds like this: hospes hic bene manebis hic summum bonum voluptas est. So here the greatest good is um, like voluptas can be translated as pleasure. So pleasure is the supreme good here in the garden of Epicurus. Okay, so here is the essence of Epicurean attitude towards life. That's why we say Epicureans. Next, which is important with Epicureans, is atomism. Atomism. So Epicurus was a continuator of Democritus and the atomistic school. What did he introduce into what new ideas did he introduce in atomism? It is the idea of clinamen, I think. I'm sorry, clinamen. Mm. Yes, very good. You have found it. Yes, perhaps the best translation. But there are a lot of other translations also. We can translate it into Russian, well, and into other languages. Epicurus, I think, is very important figure, and he does need a special introduction, like Lenin or Nietzsche or Michel Foucault. I think these names should be on everyone's mouth. And if not so, please Google them immediately. Otherwise, you will be excluded from a chat of educated people. Okay, so be careful not to seem not enough educated. So there are certain names which should be known to everybody, like names of great physicists like Einstein, Niels Bohr, Heisenberg, Landau, and others. Okay, so if you ignore these names, it's not your how to say good position, good points, but your deficiency. I'm sorry, I'm not snobbish. I'm just telling you the truth. Okay, I apologize for maybe this a little bit harsh and not democratic position, but still take it as it is. So now we come to Epicurus and his idea of clinamen, which is also a Latin word. It's not a Greek word. Why? Because we cannot find this description of Epicurus' views in the Greek original. We find it only in the poem of Lucretius. Lucretius. In Latin, it's Lucretius or Lucrezi in Russian. It's a Roman poet who was an adherent of atomism, and he adored Epicurus. And he sort of wrote a poem in Latin also, De Rerum Natura, or On the Nature of Things, um, which is just a good description of Epicurean views. Now, I think Marina has the front page of the Latin edition of Lucretius. So I will ask Marina to show the slide. Okay, so Epicurus is to the left. You see his main ideas: atomism, materialism, ataraxia, tranquility and freedom from fear; aponia, the absence of bodily pain; pleasure of body, pleasure of mind. This is voluptas, or pleasure in Latin; and the garden, okay, which I already told you. Now to the right we have this poem, 6 books or 6 parts, which consists of 6 parts. It's a big one, a big poem, um, uh, written in very, very sophisticated Latin. So I know only the essentials of Latin. So for me, it's difficult to read this poem in original. If, of course, I read it in uh, with a parallel English or Russian translation, that will make it much more easy for me, because Latin language, as it was practiced in Roman Empire, was very, very difficult so not difficult, but it was like very complex. It contained a lot of roots which do not correspond now to any English or French or Italian or Spanish word. So some of Latin roots, of course, um, uh, sort of just were transmitted to main in European languages, but some not, and it makes it difficult to read Lucretius in original. But I'm not asking you to do that, and I'm not even asking myself to do that. Maybe later, when I will be retired, I will have enough time to read Lucretius in Latin and enjoy his poem in its entirety. Well, but now what is important is only that here we find this clinamen, or like we can say, um, uh, accident, like well, um, well, clinamen means in Russian отклонение, or in English it's like a declination from a certain course. And this declination is fortuitous, sort of chance. So it doesn't obey to any law. So here is direct opposition to Stoic idea of a natural law or of fate. So according to Epicurus, the main principles of things, the atoms, do not obey strict laws. There is something indeterminate in their motion. Well, it was also, of course, when there appeared quantum mechanics, this idea was remembered by specialists in quantum mechanics, and in when there was discussed the in the principle неопределенности, or the principle of indeterminacy. Uh, just it escaped my memory.
Relativistic.
Not this principle of quantum mechanics. Соотношение неопределенности Гейзенберга.
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty. Thank you. This is brain. You see, brain is not doesn't want to function anymore. It wants strives for rest and just coziness and reading Lucretius either in Russian or in Latin or in English. But I have to deliver this lecture to strive to the end. Maybe it will take heroic like disposition out of me, but still I have to continue. Man errs as long as he strives, and man forgets some crucial words. So uncertainty relations, of course. So this uncertainty is very good depicted by this word klinamen, which means like when an atom divert itself, decline from the certain route. And by this klinamen, Epicurus wanted to sort of explain the main paradox of atomism, that why atoms are stable in certain configurations. So because if they obeyed, for example, to the law of gravity, they would all fall down on Earth, all the atoms, and the void will move upwards, okay? But if we take this klinamen, or just in some kind of indeterminism, some kind of freedom in the motion of atoms, then we can explain almost everything, okay? So, well, that was the way in which Epicurus answered the criticism, perhaps, of Aristotle or others. Okay, so this is a second generation of atomism. Now, with this klinamen comes the opposition with the Stoics. So klinamen introduced chance or statistics into the universe. So not everything is subordinate to faith, to fate. I'm sorry. There is some place for freedom, and also uh, for freedom not only in uh, the laws of nature, in nature, but also freedom in human relations. So Epicurus is a great promoter of human liberty, of human rights, of the dignity of a person. And now he sees the most important like enemy of this freedom is institu institution I'm sorry, well, institutional religion. Okay, because religion says that you should obey certain norms, certain rituals, sometimes make sacrifices, even bloody sacrifices. And so religion is considered by Epicurus, and well, you know, uh, I cannot explain it because you see, better explain it with the forces of attraction and repulsion, as Boscovich did, if you remember my first lecture. But somehow Klinamen uh, is like an answer that motion of atoms, or their say behavior of atoms, is unexplainable. It doesn't build, it doesn't sort of, it is not obedient to any strict law. So if atoms remain in a certain like position, or in a certain group, this is also can be explained by Klinamen, that this is the why they are here. So, well, of course, Stoics didn't like this idea, and said that it is impossible that so complex structures as we find in the world, especially the sky, or say the living nature, or man himself. So this is so complex that it cannot be composed out of chance motion of atoms. Uh, Yes, I think well, well, of course, what is, he despised institutional religion, not religion as itself, because he said that gods perhaps exist. But from the definition of God, it follows that God is blissful, or like, well, blessed. So blessedness means that gods cannot care for anybody, because if you care for somebody, you are sort of out of the zone of comfort, out of the comfort zone. You understand? Ousted from the comfort zone. Because if you care for somebody, for a girl or for a man, then you will start being jealous, or start to worry, or become eager uh, um, to be loved by that person. So you are already emotionally involved. And blessedness or blissfulness, or makaria in Greek, it makes you sort of aloof somehow. You remember the slide with Epicurus. So ataraxia, or just well, and the wise person should be like gods themselves. He shouldn't care for anybody, otherwise he would be emotionally involved and will lose this blissfulness or blessedness. And that's why it's futile, or this no reason to ask gods for something, for some well, favors by means of prayer and sacrifice. When people pray or make a sacrifice, they sort of ask gods to do something for them. like in exchange, you understand? So if gods do not care, then they will not intervene in our human affairs. So this, we can call it that we can call it this way, that Epicurus despised religion. But well, maybe if we mean the religion which centers on prayer and sacrifice, and somehow is aimed at moving the will of gods in favor of a person. Okay, now with Lucretius, this I would say atheistic tendency in Epicurus' philosophy strengthened. Epicurus expressly says that fear created gods. This is very created gods. Uh, okay, this thesis of Lucretius. Um, well, yes, maybe spaghetti monster is this. He doesn't care about our desires and wishes, and it's futile to pray to a flying spaghetti monster because he will not surely answer our prayers, and sacrifices will also be not are sort of futile or you understand, not necessary here. Well, uh, of course, uh, you know that Lucretius was an educated person. He lived in Rome, in the center of the Roman Empire, but Roman Empire at that time conquered a lot of territories. For example, Carthage, former like enemy of Rome, Carthage, the Phoenician colony, Carthage. And in Carthage, there were practiced bloody human sacrifices. So humans were sacrificed to a certain deity called Baal. Okay, so and even Hannibal, the here the end root is also somehow connected with this Baal, which can be translated as Lord. Okay, so this Baal always needed some fresh human sacrifices. So this was a very bloodthirsty religion. I mean, the religion of the Phoenicians. And of course, Lucretius was well informed about that. So he says that fear created gods, I'm sorry, created gods in plural. Well, excuse me, fear created gods, created gods, and Baal included. So, and people, because people were like anxious always and wanted to improve their living standards, and understood that earthquakes or uh, thunderstorms or other disasters can sort of bring death or ruin to them. So they asked gods of, say, of water, of ocean, like Neptunus or Poseidon. They asked for favors, and well, out of fear, they started to pray. And well, there's a interesting story described by Cicero also about a certain Greek. Well, it is not connected directly with Epicureans, but it is uh, quite to the theme. That there was a so-called Diagoras, who was called Diagoras the atheist. And some people wanted to argue with him, so they brought Diagoras to the temple of Poseidon, or the god of the sea, and said, see how many votive gifts were given to Poseidon by those who managed to sort of uh, save, who were saved from from storms at the sea, and in gratitude to the god of Poseidon, they brought votal well, gifts to this, and I think votary gifts to the to this temple. And Diagoras ironically said there were much more of those gifts if those who were drowned in the sea also brought their gifts. You see, so the gifts are only brought by those who remain safe, but those who just were victims of the storms and who died in the bottom of the sea, they couldn't bring these gifts. So you see, this the position of Diagoras is very much akin to the position of Epicurus and Lucretius. So that these votary or votive, I think not votary, but votive, I think, votive gifts are useless because there's no deity who answers your prayers, and so there's no use to be grateful for gods for their miraculous intervention. Okay, so here's I think, a very concise. Yes, exactly, Fedosiev. You are quite right, and we'll speak about how much Francis Bacon in the 17th century did out of this story about Diagoras, and cited it as an example of the idol of the tribe, so that humans are predisposed to optimistic scenarios somehow. Well, about that later. So just to sum up, I would ask also Marina to show the last slide, which is contains Greek numbers. Okay, there is a page from the Gospel according to Saint Matthew in Greek, and here you can see number 11. Yes, this is my book. I searched for that in vain on Tuesday, but couldn't find it. So you see IA, this is chapter 11. This is Kef on the top, Kef. Yes, and Kef is a chapter, Kephalion, chapter, caput, or chapter. This is a head from Greek, Kephalion. Uh, well, we see encephalography, for example, or cerebral. Well, you see this well, katamatheon, it means according to Matthew. So this is caput or kephalion IA, so 11th, okay? The page with Greek, with the Arabic letters is just page 14. This doesn't correspond to that. The idea is how Greeks used the numbers. So they used their letters to communicate numbers. Okay. Well, thank you. This is enough, and I think we have only 5 minutes. Well, here we have a broad panorama of the ancient Greek and Roman philosophy. You see different opinions, different schools, different views of life and destiny and purpose of life, and just ways of living, from hedonism to strict like obeisance or strict obedience to the laws of nature or to the laws of the society, from democracy to tyranny, or like totalitarianism. So as I told you in my first lecture, this is an overture. All Greek and Roman culture, you can find everything, every tune, we can say every idea there, which will be further developed in so-called European civilization, or European American civilization now, or if you include Russia, and China and India, so it will be world civilization. But it all started in this like Mediterranean basin, so in these states of Italy and Greece, and from this locality it spread throughout the whole world. So I think I haven't touched all the important figures and all the important ideas of that period, but one will speak, I hope next Tuesday about medieval Europe. We'll remember something of this ancient period, especially Aristotle, who was just the basis of medieval educational system. So something will also will of course remember the Greek medicine, which was practiced on the same the same core ideas were also valid for medieval medicine, medieval medical faculties of medieval universities. Well, maybe also we'll speak about religion. We only touched upon this origin of atheism, and of course, atheism was how to say, challenged by those who wanted to continue to practice organized religion. So, well. Okay, yes, paradox. We a lot of paradoxes will meet during our course, and well, don't be afraid. So, I would like to thank first of all Marina Tiplякова, my teacher assistant, who did a very, I would say, indispensable job helping me to arrange this presentation in a key moments of my lectures, and was practiced obedience, which is very Pythagorean virtue, you understand. So sometimes it's very much needed. Okay, and now please, I would like to say goodbye to everybody and see you on Tuesday. Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.